magazine sort of has a reputation for asking somewhat questions that may at times offend because they're rather pointed. We will nonetheless try to keep things civil today.
Why does the magazine have this reputation?
Just on account of a certain group of, a small group of, isolated group of interviewers who have created that impression.
What kind of question would be considered pointed?
I believe you did an interview with Erika Yamashita, who was a correspondent of theirs in London, and they'll have a tendency to kind of go back into your earlier history and sort of drag out, flog dead horses, if you will.
What dead horses do I have that you would like to examine?
If you're ready one, that's fine. We shall proceed.
The stable is open.
The stable is open. First question is about how it feels this time around, the performance. This particular unit you have going.
The performances themselves, or the unit?
How the whole thing is going, the unit.
It's evolving nicely.
Particular observations.
Japanese cheesecake is great. This is the first time I've been involved in performance for 8 years, since King Crimson completed its last active service, major performance. And of those 8 years, most of the time has been involved with the guitar craft courses and students throughout the world. So to return to performance, is something like returning to a life where breathing is a natural medium.
I'm not quite sure I follow that.
What do musicians do?
Play music.
Yeah.
So you sort of return to your real
It's
self?
It's like returning to breathing.
This might be relevant to what you said, David, but he was talking about how the music is evolving. I guess there's what is the percentage of the improvisation on the increase, or like how exactly is it evolving? In what ways are you changing the music?
The compositions themselves are still in a state of evolution. So when we're performing them live, they're constantly changing and presenting themselves in different ways. The potential of the pieces are presenting themselves in different ways. So we're watching this and responding to it, and at some point, we'll make a recording of these pieces. But even after the recording has been made, the pieces will still continue to evolve, I think, if we continue to perform them live.
Robert, can you explain what this evolution process involves a little more specifically?
I'll give you a specific, all right, specific. Yesterday morning in the hotel, Trey and I met. And I said, if I go like this tonight in a particular piece, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means, no, that's a different signal, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means we will play in unison this certain phrase we never played together. If I go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means we'll play an exchange of chords we've never played before. If I go 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, it means we'll double the tempo at which we're playing. And if I go 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, it means we'll move on to the next section or go to the end.
Wait, just for the benefit of the person transcribing this thing,
there was one movement to the left, one down, one to the right, and one up.
Of your head?
Yeah.
So nodding in one direction or the other?
Yes, for the 4 cardinal points.
Mm-hmm. And has that been perfected? I mean,
No, we did it for the first time last night, and neither of us could remember which direction of the compass meant which. You see.
Obviously, the system still has flaws.
Sure, but they're intentional flaws.
Is that sort of spontaneity like essential to your particular style?
Play is a necessary element of life, and because in our culture play is increasingly written out, our forms of creative activity, creative play, have become negative and destructive.
When you say play, what do you mean? You said play has been...
Play is... All right, let me differentiate between ordinary play and the play of the artist, the musician, whatever. Play is where we play without regard for the consequences. Play for the musician or the performer or the artist is play which deliberately engenders repercussions. But the quality of involvement is the same.
When you say about repercussion, I'm sorry to kind of act like the prosecuting attorney here, but what do you mean by...
No, I'm not prosecuting the attorney at all. If the musician goes on stage, the performer goes on stage to perform, and they deliver an accurate performance of the piece, there's little possibility. If, on the other hand, they go on knowing what they're doing, but play with it, there's a space in which the audience and the music can enter. It's not fixed. A good professional will be able to go on and know that if the singer is drunk or incontinent, if the stick player falls over, if the guitar amplifier blows up, they will only be superb. That's a good professional. But if the equipment works, the musicians are present, everyone knows their part, the audience is responsive, then everything can walk sideways and fly off. However, if you're playing a game, you play a game and then leave it. This is the quality of play. You play in the moment without regard for any consequences. The creative play of the performer has consequences. You're presenting a performance to an audience. So the quality of involvement is the same, but there is a difference of aim.
When Robert expounds on something like this, are you learning, or is this stuff that you have thought out before, or is this all like new philosophy to you?
It's not entirely new philosophy, but it's not the same system that I've applied to my way of working. But I find it fascinating working with Robert because of the analysis that goes into the performance and the playing and so on. I mean, the analysis doesn't in any way hinder Robert's immediate response to what's happening. I mean, it's an aid to that. It's a means of opening up and being in the moment and being prepared for that moment in time. And I have great respect for that.
Has it changed you as a musician?
It's too early to say.
Too early to say. How long has the relationship?
We've been working together on this project for, what would you say?
4 weeks?
Yeah. It's too early to say.
Too early to say.
But the cake is good.
The cake is excellent. The cake is excellent. What exactly was it that brought you guys together? And why would a David Sylvian want to work with a Robert Fripp and vice versa? I mean, it seems like a very basic question. And I'm getting raised eyebrows here. and stifled smiles.
Let me tell you about when I met my wife. I proposed within a week. I didn't know her, but I recognized that she was my wife. So when you meet someone that is your wife, you say to them, will you marry me? Now you might say, well, how did you know she was your wife? And I would say, how could I not know that this was my wife?
You make it sound so easy.
It is. It is. It's very direct and very simple, but explaining it is complex and complicated. But the perception itself, the knowing, is very direct and very simple. And if it isn't that direct and you don't have that knowing, then life is hard.
Do you, like, just out of curiosity?
Curiosity is not enough.
Okay, well, just out of need for something to write down.
Need is good. Necessity is good.
Okay.
If it's necessary, you have to.
Out of
You
sheer
understand?
necessity to write an interview, is your married life in like a quest to rationalize your gut instinct?
No.
Have you spent the ensuing years like constantly, you and your wife, thinking, why was I cut out for this person? Why was she? No.
I don't spend any time on that at all.
Is that right?
No.
You're just
To me, those two questions are remarkably dumb. I would never waste any time in my life whatsoever asking myself questions that limited and stupid. But recognizing that you have to fill the interview, of course, I don't impute them to your normal self. So I'm not insulting you. You understand?
of course. Sure. Well, that in itself is a great comment. That will not be cut. That will not be cut. But anyway, getting back, okay, so we're to assume that when you met David, that this was a partner, unmistakably.
Yeah. When we first worked together in 1985 with this good photo of us, I thoroughly enjoyed working with David and have spent the in-between 6 or 7 years looking for and hoping for an opportunity to work with him again.
And how about you, David? I pose the same question to you.
The same. The answer is very similar. I mean, I enjoyed working with Robert. At the time we were working together, we both expressed a desire to continue the relationship in some way in the future. And we've met up occasionally, once or twice a year since then, and just once again expressed the desire to work together. And when the opportunity arose, we just took it.
二人が一緒になったっていう。それを
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you actually recording over the interview
Yes.
with John Anderson and Trevor Rabin?
Oh no, this is your side B. You're a B side.
Good, that's fine.
No, I would never record over here. I have a very large collection.
I bet you.
And
Wonderful library.
it is. It's about 400 interviews
Over what period of time?
from late 80.
It's going to be a fascinating archive in 50 years' time.
I think so. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always made a point of keeping these too.
Yeah.
So.
Transfer them to DAT or something else. The tape stock is going off, particularly on early Ampex tape.
Well, actually, I was thinking of donating it to some sort of rock and roll Hall of Fame or some sort of archive of that sort.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not.
Good aggression, good.
Not erasing. The question was on what sort of actual expectations do you have in each other? What, David? How can Robert aid you as a musician and vice versa?
I don't think that's the point. The point is to create music together. Is to create something unique that comes out of the two of us and whoever we decide to work with.
So that's the expectation.
That's
to be able to create something.
That's the point of the relationship, is to create something unique to this relationship. And there isn't really an expectation beyond that.
Mr. Fripp.
I have expectations. Yeah.
Okay.
I expect to travel the world and eat cake.
Which you are doing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Playing music and recording. if you then said, well, what are your specific expectations? I'd have to say, well, the kind of cake would depend on which particular country I was eating in.
That's the scope of it.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that's the scope.
Obviously, there has to be some kind of framework. What's he saying?
じゃなくて、多分右系のナショナリズムがあるじゃないですか。によって。
We can't figure it out, but what it is, it's right wingers. Some sort of a call to arms. Down with somebody or down with something.
Oh. My argument, or my concern with Rock Against Racism, was, well, what is it for? In other words, can it be stated positively?
Why did that come about? I don't follow.
He's saying down with. I would like to say, well, what's up with? In other words, he's saying what he's against. I would like to know what he's for. You know, the 10 negative precepts of the Old Testament. Don't do this, don't do that. That's a bad thing to do. Leave that alone. And here's another 7. However, the 2 affirmative precepts of the New Testament were affirmative. You know what you're on.
Pardon me?
You know what you're on.
Yeah.
Love God, love your neighbour. I'd like to know what he's up for, not what he's down for.
I don't know, he might be up for something, I don't know. They actually do state what they are for. They're for, like, you know, the pre-war system in which in which it was a monarchy, or it wasn't actually a monarchy, but the emperor was in fact, you know, the god.
Yes.
So that's what they are very much for. Before working together, had you been familiar with each other's music, and have you listened to each other's stuff since working together?
Yeah, I was familiar with a lot of Robert's work. Yeah. And yes, I think I've listened to some of Robert's work since I've been working with the new box set that came out that Robert put together. Yeah.
What stuff had you been familiar with before you started working?
All Robert's solo work and collaborative work. The last incarnation of Crimson, plus certain albums from the Crimson periods that preceded that.
And you've since listened to the box set also?
Some of it.
What's your opinion of it?
I'd like to listen to the whole box before I give an opinion on it, but I think it's a good collection. It's a historical document of King Crimson the band and its history. I think it's very good. It's very good. But I haven't listened to the whole of it yet.
When Crimson was at its peak of popularity, how old?
When was that?
When you displaced one of those Beatles albums on the British chart or something.
1969.
Was that when it was? Yeah. Which was not necessarily the peak of the popularity, but nonetheless a very memorable.
69.
So
69?
How old were you then, David?
I must have been 9 years old.
9 years old.
No, 11 years old.
11. Were you listening to that type of music at the time, where you hadn't gotten into it yet?
No, I wasn't listening to music at all. 69, I wasn't listening to any music. We had no music played in the house when I was a kid.
So you weren't exactly familiar with it at the time. What was going on? And how about you, Robert? Were you familiar with?
Since I've worked with David, I've listened to virtually everything he's done on record. And I'm here now, so that should be a common.
The second half of the question is answered.
Yeah. Have you heard everything that David's done, and if you loathed it, would you be here now? Well, it's unlikely. It's unlikely. I know some musicians who are very good people that I respect, that I really don't like the sounds they make.
very good musicians.
In some cases, excellent musicians and lovely people.
These are people you work with, you mean?
No, I don't work with them. That's the point.
Uh-huh.
I respect their work,
Mhm.
but it's not something to which I feel I could contribute. On the other hand, there's some people who are, I think, terribly flawed as people, who make remarkable sounds that I'd love to contribute to their work and often have.
But they're not people.
I also saw John Cage play his Cactus Spikes twice. Once was with Merce Cunningham, and the other was solo. And I have a lot of respect for Cage as a man. And I don't think I could do a lot to accompany the Cactus Spikes. I will now give you a demonstration of the performance. Imagine a table with various cacti. Pluck. Plunk. Now extend this in time for about 20 minutes. Slow click of Cactus Spike amplified. Now I have a lot of respect for Cage, but I don't think I could contribute anything to that, other than silence, which is probably what's being asked for. And in fact I did, on 2 occasions.
So, but otherwise, it was a compelling performance for you. Seeing the Cactus.
No, it wasn't compelling at all. Not as a performance. The compulsion was within the audience. The audience had to contribute. They had to contribute.
Mhm.
There was very little there to invite them otherwise.
And you were contributing.
Sure, I contributed silence.
But you think that Cage is remarkable.
I think he's a remarkable man, yes. He's not a musician.
Uh-huh.
今ちょっと
Listening to last night's performance, it seemed like there were clearly songs that were David, clearly songs that were Robert. I guess your respective one man sort of takes the lead in each song, so to speak. Is that the way it works, or is it more equally balanced in every song?
It's not equally balanced in every song, but I would be hard pushed to always be able to focus on which one of us produced which piece. Most of the pieces are, they were written together.
Yeah.
But some pieces obviously come from Robert's work with Frippatronics, and I'm contributing to that. There's a couple of songs in there that I wrote which Robert contributed to, but on the whole the pieces, I would say, come out of the work we're doing together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be misleading to point to a piece of music and say, well, that's obviously, David must have written that and Robert contributed to it. I don't think it's always as obvious as maybe he's perceiving it to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, having followed, both of your careers for many years now, I think he's pretty well familiar with your signature styles, and when something comes about, he just says, up, Fripp, up, Sylvian,
But these elements exist in the same piece, in one piece. I think it's possible to listen to one piece and say, Fripp, Sylvian.
Oh, and then it's within the same piece.
Yeah.
So it manifests itself in various ways. He says, the most basic example would be a quieter tune would probably be yours. Something more dynamic would be yours. Although you can sense both styles within the same piece.
Right, let me give you a good example. In the first segment of the music, there's a burning guitar solo over a riff and simple synthesizer. That's David's piece. I had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Which song was that?
That's the burning guitar solo. It's only a guitar solo.
Oh, it's unnamed, but
You see.
uh-huh.
I had nothing to do with it. So appearances can be deceptive.
And one of the ballad-like pieces is based on the Frippatronic sequence, which Robert performed the first day that we met. It's just based around the sequence that I could hear inherent within the guitar loop.
In terms of contributions, is it a 50-50 balance? I mean, can it be boiled down to something that basic?
No.
I didn't think so. It depends on the situation in the song.
The questions are reasonable questions, but they don't have any relationship with how I think or feel about how we work. And I can understand that it may appear that the guitar solo, the Frippatronics, is more Robert's and this is more David's. I don't think like that. That's not. I have no involvement with the question.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was a bit vague, but we shall go on. He was asking that, David, because a couple of months ago, I guess you granted an interview with the magazine where you said that basically you would be taking the lead, taking Robert's lead, you'd be following Robert's lead, or some words to that effect.
I don't know what context I was said in.
When it came to the provision of cake and cappuccino, that's undoubtedly true. I'd go up to the end of the road and bring the cakes and the cappuccinos down day after day, and I'd eat them and drink it.
But I think maybe in the context, because in the interview I was asked about the kind of approach that we were taking in terms of writing the material prior to performing it. And I said, this is something I've never done before. It's something that Robert likes to do, to allow the compositions to breathe, to grow and evolve. And I said, maybe in that context, that's how I would take Robert's lead.
Was sort of giving a little bit of background there. I guess the conversation up to that point had been something about how all the stuff you had done thus far, there were projects in which you were the central figure. Whereas in this particular case, obviously, you're not the only central figure. So that's
not exactly true. I mean, I have done collaborative projects in the past, which were collaborative. I wasn't the central figure.
Actually, but the bulk of what you had done before this, I guess, were either solo projects or Japan.
Yes, but I still think that the quotation was said in the context that I just okay. It was about the way we were going to be performing this material, writing and performing it live, and then recording, which is something that we don't record.
How does this current unit differ from when you first worked together on, what was it, Born to Earth? Yeah, Born to Earth. Gone to Earth, sorry. Obviously, it's changed quite a bit since that time.
Well, the situation is different in that with Gone to Earth, Robert was contributing to material that already existed, and here we're writing together. We're creating something together from scratch. I mean, that would be an obvious difference. We're getting to know each other better and exploring the potential of this relationship, but to a far greater extent than we did on Gone to Earth, which is quite different.
And how about your opinions on
Yes.
the subject?
Yes, with the added dimension that Gone to Earth, I was invited into David's context to contribute, and it was in a recording studio. This is obviously also oriented to performance.
This time around. ただ状況の違い。David, we originally got to know you as a vocalist in Japan. I mean, obviously you're responsible for the compositions. In your solo projects, it seemed like you were concentrating more on the instrumental side of the music. Mm-hmm. And now he was noting that seeing you perform this time around, we're seeing more of the vocalist in you coming out. Mm-hmm. Robert, are your expectations in David largely as a vocalist?
No. No, that's part of it. Part of it is also the gorgeous sound. And part of it is also the visual sense.
What sense?
The visual sense,
visual. Mm-hmm.
Which accompanies all David's work. You don't get the albums in a plain brown envelope. And if you did, you know there'd be a reason for it. And in addition to that, my expectation also involves a certain approach to a piece of work in hand. In other words, this piece of work is part of my life in the process of living. It's not something I do to earn a living. So these have to do with my expectations working with David.
For you, David, do you find the vocalist within you coming out more, getting back to his original question? Do you think it's all part of the whole and you don't really think about yourself as vocalist or instrumentalist?
I guess the piece of music, as soon as I hear a piece of music, I know whether I can work with it as a vocalist. And if I can, I contribute that. I enjoy singing, and I recognize that most people recognize me as a vocalist, primarily. But I don't think that really colours what I do. But I'm very happy to be working with vocals on this project. I guess what's happened, I made a couple of albums with Hoba Shukai, and I got involved with installation work and so on. And I've missed singing, to be honest, and I wanted to get back to it. And this project is presenting me with that possibility. But it's also allowing me to work as a synthesist, which is also something I really do enjoy, creating colours, textures and so on. Especially in the live context, not always being centre stage and not whatever. I enjoy sitting back and being a part of the performance in a way that I've never been able to experience before. Being very much a part of what's happening instead of being somebody that's leading the whole project through a performance or whatever, leading musicians through a performance. I feel very much a part of this project in a way I've never felt a part of any other live performance.
Which probably has a lot to do with the fact that Robert has vision. He knows, what he wants as a whole, so you can just sort of fit into that.
I think it's
it doesn't quite describe it, does
no,
it?
There's a shared intensity, I think. A shared focus. Sometimes when I'm on stage and I feel tired and really not geared up to a performance, I can feel Robert's presence, and Robert is very focused at that moment in time, and I can feel that he is very focused in his performance, and this will pick me up and place me in the moment and help me to perform as well, bring me into the moment, that I can give something. And I've never experienced that before with any other musician, and that's very valuable to me.
Do you ever feel like you're having do you ever feel yourself in the same situation as David described there?
Yes.
Do you usually choose musicians that can support you similarly, or are you mainly the dominant figure?
The questions don't don't quite apply. It's back to the question of how did I know this was my wife? You know, have I spent the rest of my marriage rationalising why I married her? If you want to look at the specifics of us working together at the moment, it was this. David was offered a week in a storehouse. What do you call it?
In Parko, it was
Yes.
a week in Parko concert.
Yes. And David said, would I like to come and do it with him? And I said, yes, I'd love to. We had no idea what we do, but I mean, we have enough combined experience that if we walked into a venue with our equipment and no rehearsals, we'd be able to do something for a while, which is what we did when I took my equipment up 4 flights of stairs to David's apartment in London. When that particular venue fell through, we still had the commitment to work. So the next step was, well, since we're committed to work and the work isn't there, let's get the gigs. And then Mr. Udo provided the performances, and then we began to address what we might do in this performance context. Since the performance context had moved from 300 people to 2,500. Well, what do you do? And now our answer to that specific question you've seen in the past few days.
Wow.
The album will be coming out within the year, is the first part of the question.
Next year.
Next year. And it will be the result of the live performances?
We'll be writing more material together prior to going into the studio and performing more concerts prior to going into the studio. We're working with a large group of musicians on the album. And not all of the material that you heard performed over the past few days will be on the album. Or not on this album anyway.
What do you specifically have in mind? What will you commit to CD?
That is still in the air. I mean, we're some of the pieces are obviously crying out to be recorded and have come together pretty quickly. Other pieces are slowly evolving, and we're going to take more time to reach a state where we think that yes, this piece should be included on the album, and in the process of writing, we'll come up with other pieces which presents a continuity for a recording project.
Are there outside projects happening as well for you respectively?
Yes.
Did you fill us in?
Well, I'll be working on a solo album in the meantime, and I'll be writing it. I don't know if I'll get to start recording it this year, but for sure I'll be writing the material throughout this year. If I can get into the studio in between times when Robert and I will be working together, I will. That's the main project for me outside of this project.
My main performance project, apart from work with David, is King Crimson, and my work with Guitarcraft and Guitarcraft students throughout the world continues as well.
So, do you think that your collaborative work affects your outside work positively at all, or have any sort of influence on what you do outside of this?
I would hope so.
Yes, I think so too.
言葉で言うのは何でしょうか。それはどういうところなんですかね。なん
Feels like he's probing down the wrong alley here, but could you describe it in what way? Say musically or otherwise?
I'm not sure that I can at the moment. I would like more time. I mean, we haven't been working together long enough for me to really understand how it's going to influence what I'm going to be doing in the future. But I feel there will be a very beneficial influence. Whether it surfaces as a musical influence is probably not a very interesting question, but in my approach to my life and my work, I think it may influence me greatly.
look like you're lost in thought.
I'm not lost in thought, I'm thinking.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes meaning
Yes.
I have. Yes meaning I have an answer. Yes meaning.
Yes. That is the answer.
But you can't really describe what it would be. So.
No.
Okay.
Well,
It's richer. My life is richer. It has to do with, I'm thinking of a metaphor, for instance. It has to do with working with a wide palette of colours. It has to do with, moving on to another metaphor, a variety of meal, variety of fine food which nourishes the inner musician. And other weak and feeble analogies, you see. Yes, it influences me. How? Because my life as a musician is richer. I am engaged in making music. For me, it doesn't matter if the work is soundly based, whether I like the musicians I work with or not. I'm very happy that I like David. If I didn't like David, it wouldn't matter to me, because the work itself has an element which engages me. My life is richer by working with someone who doesn't adopt the precepts of most working musicians with whom I'm engaged, which is, you get in the bus and you set off for 6 weeks, you come back for a weekend, you get in the bus and set off for another 6 weeks. Why? Because that's what working musicians do. That is the only panorama or vista of the life of the working musician which is presented to the working musician. Most working musicians don't say, but this is a remarkably stupid way of living our lives. David doesn't need convincing of this. Most working musicians I work with do.
Does the difference in age affect the relationship at all?
Factor.
Would it be different if Robert was the same age as you or younger than you, and Robert, would it be different if David were?
It would be different, but I don't think it affects the relationship. It is the relationship. It's part of it, part of the reality of it. I don't know. It doesn't.
You
Does
see,
it hinder? Does affect mean hinder? Or
It could. Well, it could be hinder, or it could be enhance.
does it change? Affect or effect? Affect, change, effect to bring about. You see, I don't feel older than David. I don't feel older than Trey. In fact, I don't feel older than most of the musicians or people I work with. People my own age that I work with, I think, Jörg, they're old. So, when in the interview before, the photographer produced a photo he'd taken of me 10 years ago, I recognised myself as the guitarist in this photo. Oh, there I am. Whereas the photos he was producing today, I looked and saw my father playing my guitar. So, the only difference I feel in terms of age is when I see photographs. I'm wondering, what is my father doing working in this context? You see, I don't feel older. However, on this particular piece of work, my response to both Japan and working is quite different to the last time I was here, when I was a younger person. So I assume maturity is too much a word, but something like, it's quite possible that I am outside the experiences in which I'm engaged. In other words, I'm not trapped within them in the same way as I was a younger man. Coming back to David, I don't feel older than David. I don't know if David kind of looks across the stage and says, there's a man of 45 who's missing a front tooth. You see? I don't know. But so long as well, I don't feel geriatric. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the study of English social history, there used to be 3 ages: youth, old age, and maturity. And maturity was kind of about 45. And anyone younger than that was a youth, and anyone older than that was past it. This is a great age to be. My life has far greater resonance for me now than it's ever done. And part of developing maturity is finding part of oneself free within an event, or part of it is outside it. Part of it has to do with discovering the questions which have value in your life and those which don't. And whereas 20 years ago, if you'd asked me the question about my wife, I would have given it serious thought. Now I recognise that question has no value for me, so I discard it.
This is, I guess we're running out of time here. One last question.
Anything from the stable then?
The stable.
Anything provocative then to wind us up and make us twitch?
Yeah, this is a twitcher. This could be a twitcher.
Right.
The end of the show, David is like surrounded with young women bearing flowers. Robert, you're not really recipient to as many
flowers.
As many flowers there. Is there a feeling of awkwardness at all?
No. And if David gets given bean curds, he shares them with the other musicians.
As I share my flowers.
Those flowers.
The flowers that are in the dressing room, they're wonderful. No.
And how does it?
What?
No, how does it feel to be almost reliving the earlier days of Japan?
I'm very happy that people come to see the show. It doesn't matter to me what reason brings them into the hall, but if they're there, they may experience something. So whoever wants to come and see a show that we're putting on, I'm very happy. Whether people come off the street out of curiosity or come along to see what suit I'm wearing or whatever, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. As long as they're there in the room. Mm-hmm. And then something can happen.
Young groups, a lot of it has to do with sexuality. I can give you an example of a famous English rock group in the 1970s. One of the members was kicked out because a young woman shouted his name rather than the singer's name. I'm not going to kick David out of this band if someone shouted his name.
I might leave my brother starts getting all the flowers.
All right. I think we've run out of time. Then, Shashi?
The stable will open itself to you on another occasion.
Thank you.
This is the first time I've been enrolled in performance for 8 years, since King Crimson completed its last active service, major performance. And of those 8 years, most of the time has been involved with the guitar craft courses and students throughout the world. So to return to performance, is something like returning to a life where breathing is a natural medium.
I'm not quite sure I follow that.
What do musicians do?
Play music.
Yeah.
So you sort of return to your real
It's,
self.
it's like returning to breathing.
This might be relevant to what you said, David, but he was talking about how the music is evolving. I guess there's what is
Engenders repercussions. But the quality of involvement is the same.
when you say like repercussion. I'm sorry to kind of act like the prosecuting attorney here, but what do you mean?
No,
by
I'm not prosecuting attorney. If the musician goes on stage, the performer goes on stage to perform, and they deliver an accurate performance of the piece, there's little possibility. If, on the other hand, they go on knowing what they're doing, but play with it, there's a space in which the audience and the music can enter. It's not fixed. A good professional will be able to go on and know that if the singer is drunk or incontinent, if the stick player falls over, if the guitar amplifier blows up, they will only be superb. That's a good professional. But if the equipment works, the musicians are present, everyone knows their part, the audience is responsive, then everything can walk sideways and fly off. However, if you're playing a game, you play a game and then
The magazine sort of has a reputation for asking somewhat questions that may at times offend because they're rather pointed. You will nonetheless try to keep things civil today.
why does the magazine have this reputation?
Just on account of a certain group of, a small group of, isolated group of interviewers who have created that impression.
What kind of question would be considered pointed?
I believe you did an interview with Erika Yamashita, who was corresponding there in London, and they have a tendency to kind of go back into your earlier history and sort of drag out, flog dead horses, if you will.
What dead horses do I have that you would like to examine?
If you're ready one, that's fine. We shall proceed.
The stable is open.
The stable is open.
とりあえず
First question is about how it feels this time around, the performance. This particular unit you have going.
The performances themselves or the unit?
How the whole thing is going, the unit.
It's evolving nicely.
順調に進化している particular observations.
Japanese cheesecake is great.
For the benefit of the person transcribing this thing,
There was one movement to the left, one down, one to the right, and one up.
Of your head.
Yeah.
So nodding in one direction or the other.
Yes, for the 4 cardinal points.
And has that been perfected? I mean.
No, we did it for the first time last night, and neither of us could remember which direction of the compass meant which. You see.
Obviously, the system still has flaws.
Sure, but they're intentional flaws.
Is that sort of spontaneity like essential to your particular style?
Play is a necessary element of life, and because in our culture play is increasingly written out, our forms of creative activity, creative play, have become negative and destructive.
When you say play, what do you mean? You say play has been...
Play is... Alright, let me differentiate between ordinary play and the play of the artist, the musician, whatever. Play is where we play without regard for the consequences. Play for the musician or the performer or the artist is play which deliberately...
The percentage of the improvisation on the increase, or like how exactly is it evolving? In what ways are you changing the music?
The compositions themselves are still in a state of evolution. So when we're performing them live, they're constantly changing and presenting themselves in different ways. The potential of the pieces are presenting themselves in different ways. So we're watching this and responding to it, and at some point, we'll make a recording of these pieces. But even after the recording has been made, the pieces will still continue to evolve, I think, if we continue to perform them live.
Robert, can you explain what this evolution process involves a little more specifically?
I'll give you a specific, right? Specific. Yesterday morning in the hotel, Trey and I met. And I said, if I go like this tonight in a particular piece, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means, no, that's a different signal, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means we will play in unison this certain phrase we never played together. If I go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, it means we'll play an exchange of chords we've never played before. If I go 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, it means we'll double the tempo at which we're playing. And if I go 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, it means we'll move on to the next section or go to the end.
But just